Even if you're not in the middle of a fight with the narcissist and having chaotic days, you're still in survival mode because now you're thinking, oh, if I just clean the house really well, or I'm going to clean his office so he'll be happy when he gets home. Because the child within you that never healed from acknowledgement is still seeking some form of acknowledgement. I mean, every relationship needs acknowledgement from the other, right? It's a natural and needed thing. So because you never get any, now you're constantly putting aside the things that you want to do in order to do something for the narcissist so that he will see you. Today, I want to talk about the freeze response that keeps you stuck in not only the relationship that you may be in, but also the other areas of your life where you just aren't advancing. I'll also talk about the fight or flight responses with both you and the narcissist, mostly the narcissist. And then I end this video with solutions to help you begin the healing process. So without further ado, let us begin. The freeze response is a deeply ingrained physiological reaction and instinctual defense mechanism that occurs when the body perceives overwhelming stress or threat, often to the extent that it seems impossible to fight or flee. In the context of narcissistic abuse, this freeze response can have profound and lasting effects on a victim's life, inhibiting not only their ability to escape the abuse, but also their capacity to function in many other aspects of life, such as work, relationships, and personal ambitions. They never get to fulfill their dreams. The person might want to start a new business, for example, or have started a business, but it never gets off the ground because there are aspects that they aren't taking care of. And they aren't taking care of these aspects because doing them makes them afraid. Like marketing, for example. Perhaps they rationalize by telling themselves that they do marketing and that it's just hard or something. But marketing has more to do than just placing ads. Marketing can also involve socializing, like networking. And often these people are terrified of putting themselves out there. They are in freeze response for each their own reasons. And why do they know this yet not change it? Well, it's because they are stuck in freeze response. The freeze response is often a result of extreme emotional and psychological stress common in narcissistic abuse. Narcissists are known for their manipulative, controlling behaviors. They'll create an environment that feels emotionally unsafe for their victims. It isn't safe to ask for what you want or do the things that you want to do. It isn't safe in our homes because we never know when the next chaos will ensue. It isn't safe to stand up for ourselves because things will just get worse for us. We'll be punished somehow. We don't feel safe to fight back or to leave, and that would be the flight response. And so all that's left as an option is to freeze. If we stop asking or if we stop experiencing life, we won't get in trouble. We won't have to go through all this chaos that they put us through. We're surviving. It's a survival mechanism. Victims are paralyzed by the constant chaos. They don't even realize that they're in freeze response because they haven't had time to give themselves the space to process because they are in constant survival mode, trying to avoid, assure, and serve so as to dodge the next hit or bring this new issue under wraps. Now hear this. The freeze response shuts down the body's ability to move or take decisive action, rendering the victim unable to leave the relationship despite the awareness of the toxic dynamics. Heavy. They are literally paralyzed in fear. It isn't just in the mind, it is in the body. You have muscle tension, you have your heart rate, shallow breathing, and a feeling of numbness or detachment from one's surroundings, like with the thought of leaving the narcissistic relationship. Essentially, the body goes into a state of shutdown as a survival mechanism. It all happens just naturally. And the outcome is they will often busy themselves in the doing aka numbing the self. They'll become busy little bees. They feel emotionally paralyzed by fear, guilt, or confusion, even though they know staying is harmful. The victim finds themselves immobilized, unable to make the necessary decisions to break free. And the rational mind says, well, I can handle it. Their autonomic nervous system in a state of freeze leads them to feel stuck mentally, emotionally, and physically, despite the urgency for escape. The immobilization can be so pervasive that it becomes a barrier to pursuing a fulfilling career, creating personal projects, or achieving meaningful goals. Victims of narcissistic abuse often struggle with feelings of inadequacy, fear, or judgment, and self-doubt. These internalized emotions can make it extremely difficult for them to even begin to job search process or pursue a career path that they really want. And even if they do manage to get a job, they'll feel constantly on edge, incapable of performing at their best due to lingering fears of failure or rejection. And this stems from the freeze response, locking them in place, unable to take action or trust their own capabilities. A victim might dream of a creative career, perhaps in writing, art, or music, but when faced with the opportunity to take the first step, they experience a mental block. They might freeze, unable to write the first word of a book or launch their business, like I mentioned in the beginning. And even if they do take action, they will more than likely procrastinate on key steps like networking due to the underlying fear of rejection or criticism. Procrastination often becomes a coping mechanism tied to the freeze response. When faced with tasks or goals, a person in the grip of the freeze response can freeze mentally and emotionally. And this manifests as putting off critical decisions or delaying necessary actions. The victim will experience a profound inner conflict, wanting to take action, but unable to overcome the paralysis that prevents them from doing so. Now, while the freeze response usually is the most prominent in victims of narcissistic abuse, it's also important to acknowledge the other two responses in the stress response system is the fight and flight and how they influence the behavior. The fight response is activated when a person feels that they can confront or overpower a threat. In the case of narcissistic abuse, victims can sometimes react with anger, frustration, or assertiveness when pushed too far. However, prolonged exposure to narcissistic behavior can and often does exhaust the fight response, leading to emotional burnout. And this leaves the victim in a constant state of heightened defensiveness or aggression without the necessary energy to process their feelings or take constructive action. They're too angry. So that's kind of like both fight and flight they've checked out. They end up boiling in their anger and frustration and in complete resentment, not being able to see that there is a way out. So they find themselves lashing out emotionally, but unable to channel that energy into a healthier, more effective outcome. So now they're frozen in their anger. Now the narcissist in fight and flight response. Narcissists are usually in the fight responses. Their responses to perceived threats, whether external or internal, are driven by their desire to protect their ego, right? The fight response in the narcissist is often characterized by aggression, rage, and defensiveness. When they feel threatened or criticized, especially when their superiority or sense of control is challenged, they'll react with intense anger or hostility. It's verbal and emotional abuse. It's projection and deflection. It's overpowering with intensity, and it's punishment and revenge. Now, the flight response in narcissists, although less obvious, is just as pronounced, especially when they face situations that threaten their image or challenge their ability to maintain control. For narcissists, the flight response is about avoiding exposure or retreating from the situations where they might lose their sense of power or face vulnerability. You'll see them in flight response when they withdraw or go silent. When a narcissist feels emotionally cornered or called out, their flight response might manifest as emotional withdrawal or the silent treatment. Instead of facing the issues, they retreat into their shell, refusing to engage in conversations or communicate. And this gives them a sense of control over the situation as they refuse to participate or offer an explanation. By going silent, they punish the other person and avoid any potential exposure of their true nature. If a situation feels like it could lead to their being called out, they'll avoid it entirely. They might suddenly avoid a confrontation and leave a relationship when it starts requiring emotional intimacy, or dodge situations that demand accountability. And this is a form of emotional flight. They flee from anything that might challenge their superiority. The narcissist's fight and flight responses deeply affect those around them also, especially for those in intimate relationships. These behaviors in these abusive relationships are unpredictable, and they serve to create an environment of instability and emotional turmoil. The victim experiences the narcissist's fight response as emotional warfare, insults, manipulations, and public humiliation. On the other hand, the flight responses can feel like emotional abandonment, with the narcissist disappearing when things get tough or when they are held accountable for their actions. Both reactions serve the same ultimate goal: to protect and elevate the narcissist's fragile sense of self, no matter the impact on others. Actually, two goals is to keep the victim in freeze response, a servant to the narcissist. Whether a narcissist reacts with fight or flight, their responses are designed to protect their ego and maintain control. It serves to keep others in a state of emotional uncertainty, making it nearly impossible for victims to feel safe, understood, or validated. They've got you where they want you, so how can you get up and walk again? Well, first, it takes an intention. Then it takes willingness, a willingness to give yourself the space. Next, it takes knowledge. Socrates never said, "Know thyself," merely in the wind of a leaf here. These two words, when applied, result in wisdom and decision making, hence happiness. Now, in order to attain that wisdom, we have to first calm the mind. You can't find the answers right now because you can't empty your mind. Your head is too full with how are you going to work things out with this narcissist. Socrates said that. He said many things. He said that you can't receive more in the mind when it's full, that you have to first empty the mind, which means to get the rage out, because the mind's in the body also. So get the rage out when things happen. Get the tears out when you're feeling like you couldn't take another sip. It also means journaling and sometimes dumping on paper everything that you're thinking and feeling as you're thinking and feeling them. You're dumping it out of you and onto the paper. There's a book on that called The Artist's Way. Old book, but good book. It is designed to empty the mind and give yourself the space to have answers and to create. And giving yourself the space can also entail stretching, because these traumas are trapped in the body, but that's for another time, maybe. We're addicted to thoughts. We hold on to them. We repeat them. We feel them. And like all addictions, its outcome is never good. So start practicing. Practice letting go of all thoughts, all information that you learn, and trust that you'll be able to retrieve it when you need to access those memories. We're always trying to find solutions to the issues at hand. That, again, is being in survival mode. We just don't trust, right? We'll figure it out ourselves. We'll do it ourselves. And with all that trying, to figure things out. We can't find solutions. We have to get out of our own way. We have to empty the mind for new information to come in, for new ideas. Emptying the mind includes positive thoughts or new learnings also, because everything that we're holding on to is taking up space in our minds, space that we could use or space that we could have had available for answers. I mean, how many of you out there are buying space in OneDrive for more storage in your computers, right? Ran out of space and can't get more unless you create more space. And even in your day-to-day answers that we need for what seems to be simple minor things like, should I get the groceries now or should I get them at 3 o'clock? And it may seem like nothing, but it isn't nothing. Every decision leads to something. And when we can quiet the mind down, empty it, what shows up behind door number 1 is intuition. Intuition protects you. Intuition guides you, but only if you listen. And the more you listen, the further you'll be guided. And it's hard for us because we don't trust, which is harming us big time. We don't trust that the universe has our backs. We don't trust that others will take care of things properly. We've been hurt. We don't even trust our own selves. Well, because we don't know ourselves. And so with all of that going on, we can't feel safe. We don't feel safe. Some days we'll try to breathe out anxiety or meditate, but nothing does. Nothing works. And that's because in those moments, you are in survival mode. Even if you're not in the middle of a fight with the narcissist and having chaotic days, you're still in survival mode because now you're thinking, oh, if I just clean the house really well, or I'm going to clean his office so he'll be happy when he gets home. Because the child within you that never healed from acknowledgement is still seeking some form of acknowledgement. I mean, every relationship needs acknowledgement from the other, right? It's a natural and needed thing. So because you never get any, now you're constantly putting aside the things that you want to do in order to do something for the narcissist so that he will see you. So stop that. Acknowledge that and stop that if you want to get out of survival mode. Notice when that's happening. You need to feel safe first in order to be able to close your eyes and feel peace. You can't go there in survival mode. If you're out walking and someone's coming up behind you where you know full well that you're about to get attacked, there is no way that you'll be able to feel a state of blissful peace in that moment. And it's not a good idea to do that. It's a good idea to run. So now, how can we start feeling safe? Well, first, find a space where the narcissist is not around. And then you might want to start taking a look at what feeling safe would entail. You're processing here. Don't you need someone at times to tell you that everything is going to be fine? Or don't you sometimes need to cry on someone's shoulder in order to feel safe, to be held? But then you look to the outside and you can't find anyone that can provide that. And unfortunately, in your situation, there aren't and haven't been. They aren't there, but you are. And in those times, what you do is you ask yourself, aka the inner child, the wounded child, what they need. This isn't woo stuff here. Let this inner child tell you. Let yourself tell self. Sometimes that child will tell you that they're afraid, for example, and they'll talk about all the things that's heavy on their hearts, and you listen. And the beauty in that is that in turn, you will instinctively know what to do. Perhaps the parent is going to hug the child. The parent that's you is going to hug the child and caress the arm. And you want to physically do that to yourself. Self-soothing like that has proven to reduce cortisol in the body. It helps you maintain emotional regulation. So when you're feeling afraid, just doing this. I'm not going to go into the science of it, but it does something to the brain. Or hugging. Sometimes the words and the sobs might come out where the parent you might say something like, I'm so sorry that you're going through this. This is really powerful here. You don't deserve this. And if you can mean it from the heart, you're bringing compassion and acknowledgement to the situation. And this is healing because you're putting Humpty Dumpty back together again. You're connecting. You've disconnected from who you really are. So now you're connecting and you'll see the whole body start to relax. The mind is at peace again. And now you're probably thinking, how's that going to fix my finances, or how's that going to help me move forward and step out of freeze responses? What it will do is create a space for solutions, wisdom, and healing to come because you've emptied the mind. You've emptied another layer in the body because those fears are trapped in the body. They're formed energy blocks, and this dissolves them one layer at a time. And when I say layer, I mean it. Don't think that this is a one-time deal here. The traumas came in layers, and so too is the healing work. It takes practice. It takes patience. It takes willingness, and it takes compassion. And it's worth it. And to every layer, you get a new piece of gold. It's all up to you. I know I might sound like a broken record about giving yourself the space, but it really is step one. And there's all these other modalities after that. I have a course on that, but that's where you start. And so if you really do want change, you have to take that first step. So I leave you with that, and hopefully we will see you in the next video. Bye for now.